I used to be a backpacking guide on the Appalachian Trail. They had no business being on that mountain, and I blame Dad. Wow, shocker. Another father puts his daughter or child in danger. Wow, that never happened. The thing that drives me crazy the most is that women get made fun of for being paranoid and being like Debbie Downers or whatever, or like, just, you worry too much. Men don't worry enough. You really don't. You got too much hubris. It's not just the billionaires who are doing weird stuff, getting their kids doing weird experiments with their children because they just think they're so special and are not human. No, this is a man thing, especially a white man thing. So much confidence. I don't get it. Women continue to follow men into the wilderness. Remember that story? And trust them that they know what they're doing. And men will gaslight them and be like, don't worry so much. I know what I'm doing. Even if they have never been there. They will convince their wives to get on planes, when they're pretty new at flying, or helicopters on a day where they should have not been in the air. It's one thing when they're out there putting themselves in danger, whether it's doing this crap, riding a wave, a virginal wave, with that colonizer mindset of conquer Mother Nature, or grape her. But at least in this scenario, the kids aren't getting hurt like directly. They're just getting hurt by dad having to worry about that. And the wife is going to take care of him for the rest of his life if he is disabled as a result of his recklessness and his addiction to adrenaline and escapism. The family pays a price, but at least when they do Everest or they go do this crap, at least they're the only one who died. But when fathers bring their wives, or boyfriends bring their girlfriend, or fathers bring their children or just driving. They don't have to be into any of this stuff. So many of these car accidents are men driving too fast or, doing something because there's some other guy. It's always about performing for other men half the time, at least. They will have an obsession with, bears and are like, I'll get a bunch of women to finance this and be storage units for, and even convince one of them to come out there. And then when I get eaten by a bear, call for her to come out and help so that she dies a horrific death too, because she actually wasn't going to get eaten. Probably could have hidden that tent, but and she came out and banged it with a frying pan. She attacked the bear to try to save this man's life. But she trusted him when he was like, I think we should stay longer, even though everyone said we should leave. This is when they start getting hungry. Well, I totally forgot about this story. Even the dude from 127 hours who sawed off his arm and got out from his own little death wish adventure, then he survives, and guess what? TV. I am telling you, one of the biggest red flags of a man is one who has no humility, way too much confidence, and shames you when you're afraid. Because when they do that, they usually don't know what they're talking about or what they're doing. And I literally read about this story last night after spending all day researching this story of dads literally just zip tying his children, his 3 daughters, and putting a bag over their head so they suffocate to death. So I am so tired of dads being some sort of hero. Most of them suck, okay? Most of them suck. And even the good dads aren't doing enough, and they put so much burden on women. But then when they also have the audacity to take their families out on adventures that they know nothing about, or get in my raft, because I was a raft guide, and some of these dads were sabotaging our whole boat because they couldn't handle a woman being the guide. Shut up, bro. Let me guide. I always moved them into the back so they couldn't do sea strokes and keep messing up my angles, because it is like dancing with rocks when you're on certain rivers. It is not about just, hey, this is not Pirates of the Caribbean, bro. And every time I cover one of these stories, I swear to God, somebody who knows the family will shame me in the comments being like, this family's suffering, they're sad, this was a tragedy. I know. I've rescued some of these people. I dealt with people in the woods for a long time as a raft guide, ski instructor, backpacking guide, all that stuff. I have dealt with a lot of people in the wilderness, and I kind of get frustrated by men who endanger other people. It's not always men, okay? not all men, not all dads, but enough. And you can have two things. You can grieve a lot of things at once. I feel so bad for that family. That poor mother lost her husband and her child. And she's probably really struggling, maybe not now, maybe later, with anger at that man. Because going up on Katahdin, one of the hardest mountains in the United States, it's not the highest, but it is one of the hardest. And it is notoriously dangerous when it's cold. I'll go into a little bit in a minute on that. But I'm sorry, I get frustrated that a lot of other people's lives are put in danger as a result of one man's bad judgment. And then the daughter dies. He dies too. Yeah, that's so sad. But she died. She's 28. And she just wanted to go hiking with dad, which brings me to another point really quick, is that so many girls grow up with fathers who don't give a fork about what they like. And so they get into whatever dad likes. Now, maybe she loved hiking on her own. She came into that on her own. And sometimes fathers do introduce their daughters to things that daughters go on to liking. But a lot of these men don't want to do what their daughters want to do. They either, like I've said before, I have watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of American football just to spend time with my dad because those were the terms. Or if he came with us, to bumper boats or something during visitation, because, I was raised by a single mom, he was just doing on a bench watching us. So to me, it was like, well, I'm having fun, but I feel bad because dad's not. Why are we here? Like, I feel bad having fun because the man I came to spend time with isn't having fun. And so, as I got older, I watched TV shows I didn't care about, movies I didn't care about, and a lot of freaking football just to sit next to my dad. And maybe he might talk to me, although he usually didn't. So I get annoyed when fathers bring daughters along on their little adventures. And even if the daughters enjoy it, they're trusting these men to make good decisions. And even if the daughter knows it's not a good decision, that man won't even listen to his own wife. Do you think he's gonna let a child, even an adult child, veto his judgment? And that right there is the misogyny. That is the patriarchy that gets people dead. So men die from this too. You die because if you put yourself in danger, or you die because you're trying to impress men, or you die because you can't admit you don't know what you're doing, you're in over your head. Maybe we should go back. The summit's close, but maybe this isn't a good idea. So I'm going to go into a few of the details now just to make my point. Please stop following fathers anywhere. What I mean by that is if you're an adult and your dad's like, hey, let's go do this, and you don't feel good about something, trust yourself, don't trust him. If you are married to a man who consistently goes out on adventures and wants to bring the kids, you should say no a lot more probably, unless he has a good track record of turning back when he's in over his head, admitting when he's wrong, and over preparing for it. And also not being super impressionable, because all it takes is that man being with another man who is super toxic, or just like, is always going to be like in this dominant position. That man with bad judgment will teach your husband or boyfriend or friend or whatever to do terrible things because they, like us, trust overconfident men all the time to our own detriment. Because I personally can't imagine just being, I have tried things out of ignorance, but I can't, even as a person who knew what I was doing, I felt so much pressure to keep people alive. I was pretty sure I could never live with myself if anyone died on my boat. That's one reason why I quit. After my 6th season as a guide, 2 people died at the beginning of the season. Not on my boat, in another boat, on another company. And I was like, oh my God. And it was a high water year. And I just remember being like, I can't handle being responsible for people's lives this much anymore. It is too stressful. It's not fun, So that's when I transitioned and moved to New York and tried and did a different adventure. Creativity. And honestly, is way scarier, but not life-threatening. But, I actually meant to do this story a while ago. This woman married this guy. He's like, hey, let's take a boat. Let's say their dead bodies washed up. Stuff like this drives me crazy. This story drove me crazy. They don't know what they're doing. So let's just get into this. I'm not going to go into this too much, y'all, but I just want to tell you why I think this was unbelievably irresponsible of this dad. Now, when I tell you more about this mountain in a minute, this all is going to be like, what? Okay, this is not a mountain that you go up when weather conditions like this. Let me just read this and then I'll explain. Temperature on the mountain on Sunday began in the low 30s with cloudy skies, rain, sleet, and winds that were up to 40 miles an hour. The weather was similar on Monday. They tried to summit on Sunday with these conditions. Now, given these conditions, I want you to also think of all the people I'm going to name now who were putting their life on the line to find this dad and his daughter who followed him. They from the air, they were looking for them. That included helicopter equipment with thermal imaging. They looked for it was days. On Wednesday, these people hiked on Sunday. On Wednesday, they're still looking for them. 25 game wardens, 4 canine teams, 21 rangers, as well as helicopter and personnel from the Maine Force. Look at all this Maine Army National Guard. So one of the rangers, this woman, I appreciate her adding this context because it's important. The park is very remote and the terrain is treacherous. There is no cellular service, she said. The satellite communications are difficult. As somebody who led 23-day backpacking trips in this area, and so the AT goes all the way up to Maine. It goes through, it starts in Georgia. It goes up to Vermont. I worked on the Vermont, New Hampshire part. And let me tell you something. I have never been so cold in my life on days where it was raining. And we weren't even summiting. Just being drenched in rain in the Northeast in those mountains with it's not dry like the West. It is wet. And once you get your socks wet, you are screwed. If you get your boots wet, if you get it takes forever to dry this stuff. And, and then if you don't know any better and you're not wearing poly or pro or something, if you're wearing cotton, there's a reason why outdoor guides would call that cotton is the fabric of death. Okay, not in the summer. It's actually great in the summer when you're trying to cool down. Cotton will keep you cold, but in the wintertime, it will keep you cold and you die. So I don't know what they're wearing, but even so, even if they're wet clothes, being wet is dangerous in this kind of weather. And then you got no cell phone service, and that's really important here. And when I worked on the Appalachian Trail for a whole summer, taking teenagers on 23-day backpacking trips in this region on the AT, it is honestly one of the hardest jobs of my life. Being caught in lightning storm, doing lightning position. Okay, I think it's kind of crap. I think you're going to die anyway, but whatever. You still do it. You are so exposed. And that is not even when you're summiting. That's just out there. You get wet. You never dry. You do everything to keep from getting wet. And then if usually you don't have cell phone service. Things may have changed. This was a long time ago. I think that was maybe 20 years ago or 15, whatever. But we had satellite phones, which are super expensive. Most people don't have satellite phones, but we had to because this was our job. And we're, keeping track of teenagers and making sure they're safe. But even the satellite communications are different. Satellite phones are hard to work out there. Do you have any idea how much danger you are in when you are that isolated, especially in bad weather? We had a kid throw out his back, not really throw it out. He had some sort of spasm. He couldn't walk. It took us all day to get this kid 2 miles to get him down the mountain. We had to create a gurney out of trees and t-shirts and carry this very large child, very, very big for his age, tall guy. These scrawny little boys are carrying the largest child out with us, helping, of course, taking turns. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. And that was on a sunny day with good weather and not summiting, just hiking. This makes me angry. This was reckless. There's only a handful of campgrounds in the whole park and there's no RV hookups. It's all very primitive, and that speaks to the mission of the park to maintain true wilderness. So when you go hiking, wanting to, summit something, you are far from definitive care. And when I had a woofer, a wilderness first responder, I was taught to treat anything 2 hours from definitive care. I was taught how to deliver babies and reset dislocated things and cut stuff if I had to. Honestly, I'm so glad I never had to do that stuff. But when you are not close to definitive care, you are already baseline in danger. And then you add summiting in weather like this. Why? Why did he take her up there? Especially because she was nervous about it. She wrote it on her Substack. I'll show you in a second. She was nervous about the weather and said, well, as long as the weather is good, we're going to do this thing. And you know what? Maybe the whole thing was her idea. Why didn't he say, sorry, babe, I love you. I would do anything for you, but I will not put us in a position like this. He is the parent. And even though she is an adult, we know how this goes. I'm 47, and whenever I go, I'm going back this summer to visit my family for the first time in 4 years. It doesn't matter how old I am. There is still a power dynamic there where I am like still kind of a child. I have to work really hard to like be treated like an adult, because parents have a hard time just like, you know, and they're working on it and it's getting better. But there is just a power dynamic. You know, anyone who's taken care of their parents who were ill, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They oftentimes do not let you do what's best for them because they know what's best, right? Part of that is that thinking of like boomers and stuff. There's a Teresa Summit. The hikers generally start at about 1,000 feet elevation and gain over 4,000 feet in about 4 miles. That is steep. She said that she could still see snow on the mountain from where she lived, and the area where they were found is at cloud level. So in that kind of condition, you sometimes can't see 3 to 5 feet in front of you. Dangerous. Why didn't they turn back? There was a reason why the park had only opened 2 out of the 5 trails of the summit for the early season crowd, because there's parts of the mountains that are still very icy and very slick. That part of the mountains, it's like granite. It is just rock. If you have ice, that's bad. And also something to think about is when you get above tree line, it is like nothing but just rocks and like nothingness. There's definitely parts of the Appalachian Trail where you're like, I can't imagine doing this with like ice on the rocks or just snow on the rocks. God. I mean, supposedly they did a lot of hiking and stuff, and that he was experienced, but what does that mean? Katahdin is not a mountain that you go on, like, if you're very experienced. It's not a mountain that you would know, that you would just know to not go on that mountain. That you would look up. That if you Google Katahdin, the searches that pop up a lot is like death. People die there all the time. My cousin did the AT, you know, and it takes like 3 months, y'all. I wrote a whole article for the Washington Post about this. I know a lot. Not only did I work on the AT, I wrote an article about women hiking the AT and men stalking them. And I also have a lot of friends who've done the AT, right? It's a huge accomplishment. It is it's so hard. It's so hard. And, you know, he was so proud of himself when he summited Katahdin. And he summited on a day that it was, I mean, weather moved in, and there was like, his picture looks epic. Most people start in Georgia and work their way up, right? So, and hopefully be on Katahdin when it's at a time where, yeah, the black flies or horse flies, those things like take chunks out of you. They're awful, but at least there's no snow and ice up there. Anyway, if you've done Katahdin, I would love, let me know, because maybe I'm wrong. I didn't summit Katahdin. I did summit Mount Washington or whatever, one of the other ones. It's like big, and that was a hard day. We're very proud of ourselves, and that was with children, teenagers. On my own, it probably would have not been so hard. But I'm looking after people who don't have that as much experience, right? So we trained for 3 weeks for that summit, living in the woods, hiking all day. It's not that you can't climb it if you don't have a lot of experience. But you have to have humility and enough experience to know, or be with somebody who's a guide who can tell you when to turn around. So I don't know. They still haven't released any. Maybe he had a heart attack. Maybe this, maybe that. All I know is that the weather condition alone was not good. Like she says here, the terrain is very rocky and steep. So when it's wet or cold out at all, it's slippery. It's a very serious mountain that I think a lot of people underestimate. But if you looked into the mountain at all, you would see that is common knowledge. People die on it more than they should because they underestimate it. There's even a book called Death on Katahdin. 60 people have died in this area. They found his body on Tuesday and hers yesterday on Wednesday. But she was like 1,000 feet away from him. So I don't know what happened. Maybe he died first and then she tried to come down. Like, I don't know what happened. Maybe he had a heart attack and she tried. All I know is that from what I am reading, that was not a great day to summit. Maybe this was about, I could be wrong, y'all. Maybe this had nothing to do, but the preliminary reports coming from that I have read is that they died basically from exposure from the elements. That it wasn't like, maybe he had something happen, but it was the elements. And again, I feel terrible for this family. But I also don't want this tragedy to we have to learn from this. And what I really want is women who follow me, you've been taught your whole life to trust men, to follow men, give them the benefit of the doubt. They're the leaders. We have been taught that our whole lives, and they have been taught that. And I want to move that the opposite. You trust yourself. You trust your intuition. Doesn't mean you don't take chances. Doesn't mean you don't listen to their input at all. But at the end of the day, unless they have proven to you that they are humble enough to admit when they're wrong, humble enough to ask for direction, humble enough to turn around when something doesn't feel right or something is off, and they err on the side of caution when it involves your life or your children's lives especially, but even their own. And if they have not proven that over a long period of time, do not go anywhere with these dudes that you don't know is somewhat safe. God, we can't even get in the car with them. I always thought I was going to die when my dad was driving me anywhere. I was like, me and my sister had a whole sneaky plan to like make it so she just happened to be near the airport when I flew him, because it was I was so afraid of driving with him. Whenever I would fly in to visit, he was like, I know he was trying to pick me up at the airport because he wanted to, but he had the kind of ego that would not take that news well, that I don't feel safe. He's wrecked like so many cars, y'all. He thought his car was possessed by a ghost. He literally turned in 2 different cars because they surged, even though he had like a problem with his foot. I know he puts that pedal, but he said a ghost did it, y'all. Anyway, these 2 humans are gone now. And this is what patriarchy does to men. This is what it does to y'all. This is what it does to y'all. And then this is what it does to people who love y'all. Unpack this stuff. They were apparently a really religious family. So like all the posts that I've seen from people in their community and their family was like, God, 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 God. But like they always have to say, well, they're at least doing something they're passionate about. But in this case, being near God. But whatever. And then there was like all these quotes. So this is what her last post apparently on her Substack. I'm on another sales trip with my dad, like the one I described in the post. So we planned with the trip around a weekend so that we could climb Mount Katahdin tomorrow. If it's not pouring with rain, we'll start. I'm not sure if you should go at all if it's raining, but anyway, if it's not pouring with rain, we'll start hiking on the Able, or I'm not saying that right, trail between 6 and 7 a.m. If weather prevents us from going up to Katahdin, we'll drive back to New York and stop at Walden Pond on the way. I'm a little nervous after everything I've read. Oh, I forgot about this part. Ugh. There it is. Somebody was reading into it. Somebody did their homework. Somebody was nervous about this trail, and rightfully so. And somebody didn't come home. I'm nervous about the trail, but I'm going to do it if weather permits. But it didn't. So why were y'all there? I'm telling you, this was Dad. She was nervous, worried about weather, if weather permits, and yet they were up there in those conditions. If you don't see me back on Substack Notes again, that's where I am. Oh my God. What a horrifying last post. This is so upsetting. Look at her. Look at them. Like, they look so happy. I hate this outcome. I hope I don't sound insensitive that I'm being very hard on this man. But how many women and children have to die because of overconfident men? I'm sick of it. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for their family. This is what patriarchy has done. Okay? That's what this is. And men not dealing with this and and all of that. And then this happened. So there's a lot of stuff on Reddit. You always take Reddit with a grain of salt. But this person said, I'm up here now. I spoke to a ranger Monday who told me a guy who had hiked Katahdin over 50 times said going up Sunday was the worst he had ever experienced. The hiker told the ranger he had to change his socks and other undergarments 3 times each because of the rain, sleet, wind, and cold. And this is what I think. I think they died of hypothermia. Absolutely. That would, if I had to guess, that's what they died of. This person who was up there said that they were on Katahdin on Monday, because the weather was better that day than Sunday. They had to ask to use a lean. So that's one of these little shelters that's all over the AT. It's an open shelter. It's basically just a shelter from the rain. It's not really warm unless you pile in there and snuggle, whatever. At least it's from wind and rain. Asked if I could go into a lean to thaw out. It was 20 degrees warmer that day, and I still had about 2,000 feet below. I was 2,000 feet below the summit. So if I was caught out in the open, even on Monday, I would have been in trouble, right? So this person was 2,000 feet below that. They were close to the summit, by the way, but I had to go and seek shelter when it was 20 degrees warmer, 2,000 feet lower in elevation in that kind of weather. The other issue is that it's not accessible. Mount Washington, which is one I did. I forgot. I guess it's taller. Whatever. I'm not looking all this up. I'm just going off memory. But some of these other mountains are more accessible. It's an accessibility thing. How far are you from definitive care? I need people to think about this. If you follow me before you go in the wilderness, think about this kind of stuff. I'm not saying this to scare you from going. Please don't take it as I love the outdoors, but information is power. I also found this. I've been learning a lot about these mountains that I forgot about or didn't know how relative to other places as it was. How these summits in the Northeast, even though they're not high, as high as some of these ones out west or in other parts of the world, they will humble you so fast. And it's because just the climate exposure and that the winds are notoriously crazy there. And that Katahdin, which I've never been on, some of the routes to the summit require hand over foot rock scrambling. Do that in wet, icy conditions. Now, I didn't do that in Katahdin, but I did that in other parts of the AT where I was I'm not roped up, but this is scary with a giant pack on. Anyway, this one put it nicely. It's to be noted that hiking in most of the mountains in the Northeast almost always on bare granite slabs. Once you're above tree line, it's slippery when it's wet, making it super easy to lose your footing and fall. And even, I don't think they fell, but that is going to slow you down. You're wet, you're cold, you've been hiking all day, you're freezing. And then you have to go super slow, which means you're not burning as much energy. That's what keeps you warm. So sometimes going painfully slow and being freezing. Also, apparently the dad was not only a dad, he was a grandfather too. I have not heard anything about her being a parent, so I'm guessing he's a grandfather. He's got other children. I'm assuming they would have said if she was a parent. But from what we know from women, if she was a parent, she probably wouldn't have gone. Or if she did, hopefully she would have not trusted him. I just took a break to go to the bathroom. And when I came back, I just scrolled social media as a palate cleanser. And I saw this. I'm not going into the whole story, but this is just another guy. He's this is their thing. I'm in the mountains. I realize I'm at my best. I was smart, witty, passionate, and bold. Yeah, and now you're dead. And this is what they always say. And this is what people are saying about the father. Oh, at least they died doing what they love. Fork that. So tomorrow I'm getting on a plane because he was living in Brooklyn to be closer to family during the pandemic. I guess he realized he probably needs to be close to family and community, but nope. Chose escapism again. And again, I have nothing against the outdoors. I love the outdoors. It's a place of healing. I love the adventure and I love the things but the way men approach it is so reckless and causes so much harm, and it's always women cleaning up their mess. They didn't say he had any kids or anything. I hope he did not. He's 41, though. Tomorrow I'm getting on a plane to Alaska in an attempt to climb the 3rd highest peak in the world because I don't want to know what happens to a dream deferred. They say this crap all the time, y'all. And I feel bad for this guy, okay? And if you knew this guy, I am sorry you lost somebody. I'm just like, I hate how much, this is also part of capitalism, y'all. It has got us like feeling like the only way we can be alive, feel something, is to go do this stuff that a lot of people are not trained for. Or to, just to push. But a lot of times it's like, it's just escapism, especially for men. I love it when women do this stuff, because usually when women do it, they do it more responsibly, and they keep other people in mind. Okay? And a lot of women don't even realize how strong they are until they start climbing or doing anything. I love seeing women climbing, as long as they don't become just men and their toxic relationship with themselves and nature and the world. Anything to challenge oneself and feel alive, but not oftentimes. It's not always this, but a lot of times avoiding the one thing that would bring them peace. Going in here and dealing and all this. I'm still dealing with this and this. I will to the day I die. I love challenge. I think challenge is good. I think I try to do at least something every day that makes me proud of myself. But to me, those challenges are very different than they used to be. I used to go do crazy challenges, but then, not know how to say no to men, or not know how to pay my bills in a way that's responsible. Like, I always paid my bills, but I didn't know how to do it in a way where I'm just like, didn't continue to just whatever. I'll never own a house, probably. I'm 47 and I'm still it's just debt I'm paying off. But I'm facing those things. Those are scary, but I'm facing them. I don't need to go climb another mountain. I need to know how to face the stuff that scares me, right? You couldn't pay me to climb Everest. You could not pay me $1 million to climb Everest. No way. When I was hiking in the Appalachians, when I was working on the Appalachian Trail in the New York part, this is what we slept under. So I kind of forgot until I did this story how much time or how much I actually worked in this environment. So I do feel a little qualified to talk about this. And the point being, stop trusting men. I mean, that's kind of the point right there, but especially in the outdoors, they don't know what they're doing. Anyway, let me know what y'all think. Please follow my Patreon if you can afford it. I've got a live coming up on the 10th. We're going to talk about how we broke into writing and journalism and also immigrated. And I had a watch party on Sunday. I'm going to be doing a lot of travel content from the U.S. I won't be on here as much while we're over in the U.S. for a month. So if you want to keep up with us over there, I do personal stories over there and travel stuff. So anyway, let me know what y'all think. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Sorry for another hard story. I'll try to do something more lighthearted. I'm tired of these depressing stories. And let me know if you heard the comments on. Trust yourself because you're a badass. Don't need to find no man because you're a badass. Trust yourself. You should probably be a leader because men suck at it. They're terrible leaders. You're a badass. You're a badass. Don't let anyone tell you you're not a badass. 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 Don't let men tell you you're not a badass. I was on TV for being a badass. I did a lot of stuff as a badass. Saw my first grizzly bear and all the men behind me running away. But I'm like, okay, I got pepper spray, but I don't want to die. But I'm a badass still. Badass camping. Very disorganized. And this is also a badass. Badass looks a lot of different ways. Badass. You're a badass. We're badasses. Trust yourself, not men, 'cause you're the baddest ass. Follow my Patreon if you like my stuff.